My name is Myrna, and I am 27 years old. The night before my wedding, I was sitting on the edge of my bed, painting my toenails a soft blush pink, thinking about how my whole life was about to change in the most beautiful way. Daniel and I had been together for 4 years. For years of Sunday morning pancakes, of him holding my hand through my father's funeral, of building something real and quiet and ours. Tomorrow was supposed to be the best day of my life. Instead, it became the day I learned exactly who my mother was. Her name is Patricia. I want you to remember that name. At around 10:47 p.m., my phone started ringing. First it was my cousin Leah, then my Aunt Rosie, then 3 numbers I barely recognized. I picked up Leah's call, and her voice was rushed, almost breathless. Myrna, I don't even know how to say this. Your mom just called me. She told me not to come to the wedding tomorrow. I laughed because I thought it was some kind of joke. She said you had a mental breakdown, Leah continued, and that the wedding is basically a disaster waiting to happen. She said the whole family agreed they're not going, and that I shouldn't be the only one there. I sat completely still. The nail polish brush was still in my hand. Patricia had called all 94 guests. Every single one. Some she called twice. She told my father's side of the family that I was unstable. She told my mother's side that Daniel was hiding something dangerous. She used different stories for different people, but the message was the same: don't come. And her closing line, which I would hear repeated back to me by 7 different relatives that night, was this: the whole family agrees we're not going. Don't be the only one there. It was psychological warfare dressed up in maternal concern. I called Daniel at 11:15 p.m. I wasn't crying yet. I was in that cold, clear place that comes before the crying, where everything feels very sharp and very slow. I told him what was happening. There was a pause on his end, and then he said something that I will never forget for as long as I live. He said, Myrna, I need you to trust me. Just get some sleep. Whatever happens tomorrow, I am standing at that altar. And I have everything we need. I didn't know what he meant by that. Not yet. The morning of my wedding, I got dressed alone. My maid of honor, my best friend since college, was the only person who showed up to help me. Her name is Jolene, and she showed up with a coffee, a bouquet, and fire in her eyes. She helped zip my dress without saying anything dramatic. She just looked at me in the mirror and said, You're the most beautiful person in this room, and today is yours. I held on to that. We arrived at the church at 11:30 a.m. The parking lot was nearly empty. I could see the venue coordinator pacing near the entrance, visibly nervous. Inside, the chairs were set for 94 people. When I peeked through the side door before the ceremony, I counted 9 guests. 9. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. The music started. I had no father to walk me down the aisle, and now I had no family either. I held my bouquet with both hands and I walked. Alone. My heels clicked against the marble floor, and every empty chair felt like a small humiliation Patricia had personally arranged for me. The pastor stood at the front, pale-faced, clearly uncomfortable with the near-empty room. Daniel stood beside him, and when he saw me, his expression didn't change with pity or awkwardness. He looked at me like I was the only thing in the room worth looking at. That was the only thing holding me together. I was halfway down the aisle when I heard it. The back doors of the church burst open. Not 1 person. Not 5. A flood. 150, maybe 200 people walked in, all of them wearing matching navy blue jackets. They were organized. They moved quickly and quietly into the empty pews, filling every single seat within 2 minutes. The pastor froze mid-breath. Jolene grabbed her own arm. I stopped walking entirely. I had no idea who any of them were. And then the pastor's microphone buzzed with feedback, and someone in the back of the room held up a phone, and a text message appeared on the large display screen behind the altar, the one that was supposed to show our wedding vows. The message was sent to Patricia's number. It read, Turn around. Your daughter's groom is not what you think he is. He's been keeping receipts. Patricia was sitting in the 3rd row. She had come. After all that, she had still come, perhaps to watch the failure she had engineered. I saw her face when she read those words on the screen. The color left her completely. Daniel reached out his hand toward me. I walked the rest of the aisle. And that is when he opened the folder. I reached Daniel's hand at the altar, and he squeezed my fingers once, firmly, like a promise. The church was now completely full. Those 200 strangers in navy jackets sat perfectly silent, watching. The pastor had recovered enough to stand straight, though his hands were visibly trembling around his notes. Patricia was still in the third row, her face unreadable, her phone gripped tightly in her lap. I looked at Daniel and whispered, "Who are these people?" He leaned close to my ear and said, "Witnesses. Every story needs them." That was the moment I understood that Daniel had been preparing for this for a very long time. He reached beneath the altar table and pulled out a cream-colored folder, thick and neatly organized, held together with a binder clip. He handed it to the pastor first, not to open, just to hold. Then he turned to face the congregation, including the 200 strangers, including Patricia, including the 9 original guests who had shown up despite everything. His voice was calm. Not angry. Not performative. Just calm and clear in the way that only someone telling the absolute truth can be. He said, "Before we begin, there are a few things this room deserves to know." Patricia stood up immediately. "This is inappropriate. This is my daughter's wedding, and you have no right." One of the navy-jacketed people in the back row stood up at the same moment, and Patricia stopped talking. I did not understand why until later. I will get to that. Daniel opened the folder himself. The first receipt was a screenshot of a text message Patricia had sent to Daniel's mother 18 months ago. In it, she called me emotionally unstable, said I had a history of inventing problems, and suggested that Daniel was making a mistake that would ruin his life. She had never met his mother in person. She had found her number through my phone while I was in the shower during a family visit. Daniel's mother had saved every message. The second receipt was a voicemail transcript. Patricia had called Daniel's workplace, identified herself as a concerned family member, and suggested he had anger issues that his employer should be aware of. Daniel had never raised his voice at me once in 4 years. His HR department had flagged the call and kept the record. The third was a series of emails. Patricia had contacted the venue coordinator 3 weeks before the wedding, claiming the event had been canceled and requesting a refund on my behalf, without my knowledge. The coordinator, thankfully, had verified with Daniel before processing anything. Those emails were printed and dated. By the 4th receipt, Patricia had sat back down. By the 8th, she was staring at the floor. By the 15th, someone in the 3rd pew handed her a glass of water that she did not drink. There were 156 receipts total. Daniel did not read all of them out loud. He didn't need to. He summarized them clearly and without cruelty. Phone calls made to relatives spreading false information. About my mental health going back 2.5 years. A forged letter sent to my previous employer suggesting I had stolen from the company, which had been intercepted by a colleague who recognized Patricia's email address from a previous interaction. Attempts to contact my therapist. A fake social media account created to send concerning messages to Daniel's sister about my character. 156 individual, documented, deliberate acts of sabotage against my life and my relationship. And then Daniel explained who the 200 people in navy jackets were. They were members of a private online community that Daniel had quietly joined 8 months ago, a support group for people whose relationships had been targeted by what the group called coordinated family interference. He had shared our story anonymously. When the members heard what happened the night before the wedding, that Patricia had called 94 guests and nearly emptied the church, they had organized overnight. They drove from 4 different states. They wore matching jackets so the venue would let them in as a group. They came so that I would not walk into an empty room. They came so that I would know that strangers who had never met me believed me, supported me, and thought I deserved a full church on my wedding day. I could not breathe for a moment. I genuinely could not breathe. Jolene was crying in the front row. The pastor was gripping the folder against his chest like it was something sacred. Patricia did not look up from the floor for a long time. Daniel turned back to me and took both my hands. He said, "I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to carry this the way I've been carrying it. I wanted today to be yours. I just needed to make sure it actually was." We got married. Right there in that full and silent church, surrounded by 200 strangers who gave us a standing ovation before the pastor even said a word. The vows were simple. We wrote them ourselves. I cried through most of mine and Daniel smiled through most of his, and Jolene had to be handed 3 tissues by a navy-jacketed woman she had never met before that morning. Patricia left before the reception. She didn't say anything to me on her way out. But one of Daniel's receipts had already been forwarded to a family attorney, and the conversation that needed to happen would happen, just not that day. That day was mine. I am Myrna. I am 27 years old. I walked down an aisle alone and arrived at the other end with 200 people at my back, and the only man I have ever trusted standing in front of me. My mother tried to take my wedding from me with phone calls and lies and years of quiet destruction. My husband answered her with 156 pieces of paper and 200 strangers in matching jackets. If you are watching this and someone in your life is doing what Patricia did to me, please know that documentation is everything. Keep every message. Save every voicemail. Write down every date. The truth is patient. It will wait in a folder until exactly the right moment, and when it opens, no amount of manipulation can close it again.